The envelope hit the table with a soft sound that felt far louder than it should have. "I will pay you to leave my daughter," the rich man said. The words hung in the air, heavy and confident, as if they were not a request but a fact already settled. Aaron did not reach for the envelope. He did not even look at it. His eyes stayed on the man across from him, calm, steady, unafraid. That alone unsettled Victor Hale more than he cared to admit. Elena stood frozen between them, her fingers gripping the sleeve of Aaron's shirt. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure they could hear it. She had known her father would do something like this. She had just not expected it to happen so directly, so coldly. "You cannot do this," she said, her voice shaking. "You cannot treat people like objects." Victor turned to her with a look that mixed disappointment and control. "I am protecting you. This is not a discussion." Aaron finally spoke. "If you think money can decide who she loves, then you do not know your daughter at all." Victor's jaw tightened. "You are nothing. You came from nothing. And when this ends, you will return to nothing. Take the money and spare us all the inconvenience." Aaron pushed the envelope back across the table. "No." That single word changed everything. If you enjoy stories about love, power, and consequences, subscribe now and stay with this story until the end, because what happens next proves that control always has a cost. Victor Hale did not argue further. He did not threaten. He simply nodded as if acknowledging a child who did not yet understand how the world worked. "You will regret this," he said softly. He left the room without another word. That night, Elena was taken back to her father's estate under the excuse of concern and safety. Her phone was taken away. Her access to her accounts was cut off. The security gates closed behind her like a prison she had never realized existed. Aaron walked home alone with the weight of what he had just done settling into his chest. He knew men like Victor Hale did not accept rejection. They responded to it. The next morning, the response began. Aaron's landlord called to inform him that the building had been sold and tenants were required to vacate within 30 days. The explanation sounded rehearsed and hollow. By afternoon, his manager called him into a meeting and explained that due to restructuring, his position had been eliminated effective immediately. No severance, no appeal. By evening, his bank account was frozen, pending a review for suspicious activity he knew he had never committed. It was not coincidence. It was strategy. Victor Hale did not attack directly. He erased. Aaron sat in his small apartment, staring at the walls as the truth became undeniable. Victor was not trying to scare him. He was trying to exhaust him, to make survival so difficult that leaving Elena would feel like relief. But Aaron had grown up learning how to survive without comfort. He had been raised by a mother who worked 3 jobs and still came home smiling. A woman who taught him that dignity was something no one could take unless you handed it over. So he did not run. He went to work finding another job. When doors closed, he knocked on others. When accounts froze, he borrowed from friends who believed in him. When his apartment notice came, he packed his things quietly and thanked the landlord for the time he had there. Victor's people watched all of it with interest. "What is he doing now?" Victor asked one evening as he sipped wine in his office overlooking the city. "He has not contacted Elena," his assistant said. "He has not responded to the pressure." Victor frowned. That was unexpected. "Increase it," he said. "I want him desperate." Elena was breaking in her own way. She had never known what it felt like to be powerless. Every comfort she had known now felt like a cage. Guards followed her everywhere. Conversations were monitored. Her father spoke to her gently but firmly, always framing his control as love. "That man will ruin your life," Victor said one night as they sat in the grand dining room. "I am trying to save you." "You are trying to own me," Elena replied. Victor slammed his hand on the table. "Everything you have exists because of me." Elena met his eyes without fear. "Then take it all back. I would rather have nothing than be controlled." Victor stood slowly. "You sound like him." That was the moment he realized this was no longer about removing Aaron. It was about reclaiming authority. Weeks passed. Aaron found work at a small logistics company that valued effort more than pedigree. He slept on a friend's couch. He kept moving forward even when every step felt heavier than the last. What Victor did not know was that Aaron was not as alone as he appeared. Before Victor had stepped into the room with that envelope, Aaron had already been building something quietly. He had been working with a former mentor on a startup idea focused on ethical supply chains. It was slow. It was underfunded, but it was real. Victor had destroyed the visible paths but missed the hidden ones. One evening, Aaron received an unexpected message. It was from Elena. She had found a way to get access to a secure phone during a charity event. Her message was short and urgent. I am okay. Do not give up. I believe in you. Aaron stared at the screen for a long time. That single sentence gave him more strength than any amount of money ever could. Victor discovered the message the next day. His security team reported the breach and traced it back. His face darkened. So he is still influencing her, Victor said coldly. Yes, sir. Victor nodded once. Then it is time to end this. He arranged a meeting with the board of directors of the logistics company Aaron worked for. Victor Hale was a name that commanded attention. He spoke calmly and convincingly about risks, compliance concerns, and reputational exposure. By the end of the week, Aaron was let go again. This time it hurt more. He sat alone late at night staring at the city lights, wondering how much more pressure a person could endure before breaking. He thought about the envelope, about how easy it would have been to take it and disappear. But then he thought about Elena trapped behind gates and guards and expectations, about the life she would live if her father succeeded, and he stood up. If Victor wanted a war of influence, then Aaron would stop playing defense. He reached out to an old contact from his startup days, someone who had gone on to work in investigative journalism, someone who did not scare easily. They met quietly in a small cafe far from Victor's usual territory. I need to know everything about Victor Hale, Aaron said. Not the public story, the real one. The journalist raised an eyebrow. You know who he is, right? I know, Aaron said. That is why I am asking. The journalist leaned back slowly. If we do this, there is no going back. Aaron nodded. There already is no going back. What Victor Hale had built was powerful, but it was not clean. Behind the philanthropy and polished interviews were quiet settlements, silenced employees, and partnerships that bent rules just enough to avoid headlines. The investigation took months. Elena endured her own battle during that time. She learned how her father operated. She listened carefully. She pretended to comply while memorizing details. She built relationships with staff who trusted her. She gathered information without revealing her intent. She was no longer just a daughter. She was learning to become her own person. Victor began to sense something shifting, but misread it as obedience returning. You see, he told himself, time always fixes these things. Then the first article dropped. It did not mention Aaron. It did not mention Elena. It focused on a shell company Victor had used to quietly bury a labor violation overseas. The story gained traction. Victor dismissed it as noise. Then another article appeared. Then another. Each one peeling back a layer of his empire. Share prices dipped. Partners grew nervous. Victor felt something he had not felt in decades. Uncertainty. He summoned his legal team. Find out who is behind this? They tried, but the work had been done carefully, slowly, patiently. Aaron watched from the sidelines as the machine he had been crushed under began to creak. Elena confronted her father one evening, holding a tablet displaying the headlines. What is this? She asked. Victor looked at the screen, then at her. His expression hardened. Lies, he said. People who envy power always attack it. Elena shook her head. You taught me to read contracts, to look for patterns. These are not lies. Victor stepped closer. You have no idea what you are meddling in. She met his gaze. For the first time I do. The house that once felt unshakable began to crack from within. Victor still believed he could fix it. He always had. So he made one last decision. He would confront Aaron directly. The meeting was arranged under the pretense of a settlement, a final offer. This time Victor did not bring an envelope. He brought consequences. Aaron arrived calm but alert. He knew this conversation would define everything that followed. Victor leaned forward and spoke quietly. End this. Walk away. I will make sure you never have to worry about money again. Aaron shook his head. This stopped being about money a long time ago. Victor's eyes darkened. Then you will lose everything. Aaron smiled slightly. You already tried that. Victor stared at him, realizing too late that the man he had tried to erase had learned how to stand. And somewhere between that realization and the silence that followed, Victor Hale felt something unfamiliar settle into his chest. Fear. Because for the first time in his life, money had not solved the problem. And the man he tried to buy was no longer playing defense. The real consequences were just beginning. Victor Hale did not leave the meeting immediately. He sat there staring at Aaron as if trying to calculate a move that no longer existed. For decades, every problem had reduced itself to leverage, money, fear, or access. Now none of those levers worked. You think exposing a few cracks makes you powerful, Victor finally said. You have no idea what I can still do. Aaron leaned forward slightly. I know exactly what you can do. You can keep fighting and lose everything slowly, or you can stop and lose control quickly. Either way, this ends with you realizing you cannot own people. Victor laughed once, sharp and humorless. You sound naive. Maybe, Aaron replied, but I am free. That word struck Victor harder than any accusation. The meeting ended without threats or agreements. Victor walked out knowing the ground beneath him was no longer solid. What followed was not a dramatic collapse, but something worse. A gradual unraveling. More investigation surfaced. Not orchestrated attacks, but consequences of years of shortcuts now catching up. Partners distanced themselves. Donations were quietly returned. Invitations stopped coming. Victor's name still carried weight, but it no longer inspired confidence. It inspired caution. Elena watched it all unfold from inside the estate that once felt untouchable. Her father no longer spoke of certainty. His calls were tense, his nights restless. She saw him age in months. One evening she found him alone in his study, staring at old photographs. A younger Victor smiling with an arm around a woman who had died years ago. Her mother. You would not recognize this man anymore, Victor said without looking up. Elena stepped closer. She would recognize him. She would just be disappointed. Victor closed his eyes. For the first time, he did not argue. The house grew quieter as staff left and security was reduced. Not because Victor wanted it that way, but because necessity demanded it. Control was expensive. Elena asked to leave. Victor refused at first out of habit more than conviction. Then one night he sighed and said something that stunned her. Go. She looked at him, unsure if she had heard correctly. You will come back, he added softly. They always do. Elena did not respond. She packed a single suitcase and walked out through gates that no longer felt like barriers. Aaron was waiting, not with grand gestures or speeches, just with open arms. They did not rush into a perfect life. They struggled. They built slowly. They learned each other without the shadow of Victor's control looming over every moment. Aaron's startup finally secured funding not because of revenge or exposure, but because the idea was sound. Ethical transparency became valuable as industry shifted. The same values Victor had dismissed became market strengths. Elena found her own path. She studied law, focusing on corporate accountability, not to destroy empires, but to prevent abuses before they took root. Victor watched all of this from a distance. He tried to regain footing. He restructured. He negotiated. But something fundamental had changed. People no longer feared him, and without fear, his influence shrank. Years later, Victor Hale sat in a smaller office with fewer windows and thinner walls. He was still wealthy by most standards, but no longer untouchable. One afternoon, he received a letter. Not legal, not hostile, an invitation. Elena was getting married. Victor read the card several times. His hands trembled slightly. He did not know if he was welcome. He arrived quietly dressed, simply, without entourage or announcement. The venue was modest, the crowd warm. Aaron saw him first. For a long moment, neither man moved. Then Aaron extended his hand. Victor hesitated, then took it. "Thank you for coming," Aaron said. Victor nodded. "I would not miss this." The ceremony was not extravagant. It was sincere. When Elena walked down the aisle, she did not look at her father with resentment. She looked at him with something closer to peace. Afterward, Victor stood alone near the edge of the reception until Elena approached him. "I am glad you came," she said. "I am glad you let me," Victor replied. They did not resolve everything that day. They did not need to. As Victor watched his daughter laugh freely, he finally understood the cost of the offer he had made years earlier. Money could buy silence. Power could buy compliance. But neither could buy love. And the man he had tried to erase had given him something he never expected. A lesson. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think, then like, subscribe, and stay connected. Because the most powerful stories are not about money or control, but about the courage to choose love over fear.